Avalos artists, this is Mr. Bailey. I'm going to take you through, really today, how to get yourself set up for success for the Fabric of Consciousness project. So one of those approaches is to be able to use a photograph, or photographs in this case. So you're going to have two separate photographs that you're going to desaturate and colorize, because the goal is for us is to really look at how color psychologically can help support. It's one of those fundamentals of design. Remember, layout, composition, color, text, and image. So two of those, text and image, color and image right here, is what we're going to be putting into the project itself. And so hopefully once you get into that Photopea program and you've had some time to really play around with it, you've become at least familiar with the workspace, and now we're going to be able to bring in and manipulate images in this case. So as we pull up, let's go ahead and bring our attention to that program itself. And so we have the new project that we want to start, and it's always going to come to this standard window. And remember, what's great about Photopea is it actually already gives you different sizes when you're looking at the images itself. And so these are all basically size or pre-sized canvases. Canvas is going to be the white image that comes up. And so let's go ahead and look at it. I'm going to go ahead and name it Fabric of Consciousness, or FOC 8x10. Down under Photo, we're going to go here, and even though there's 8x12, you see all these different standards. Now what's good about this project is I did say that you should try to make it about an 8x10 because it's a standard size of a photograph that you can get printed anywhere like CVS or Walmart. Really, it's just up to you. A side note is it's also going to ask you for the type of paper that you want to print on. There's matte, luster, or glossy. Matte and luster are essentially not shiny, where glossy is a shiny photograph. The reason why we don't want to do the shine or the glossy is because it leaves a reflection, and we don't want this project to have a reflection. Being that we are using that paper weaving and there's going to be some flexibility to the photograph, if you use it matte and luster, it'll definitely give you a better look and feel overall. So go up here to width, you're going to put 8, make sure that's set up for inches, and then you have 10 inches high. For our resolution, we want it to be higher because we want because it is an 8x10, it's a larger image. The larger the images, or the larger the paper, the higher you want that DPI to be. So in this case, we're going to go with a print standard of 300, and we're going to hit create. Now, because I'm going to show you just with some of the, we're going to edit a photograph, I'm going to go ahead and take one of the photographs that are already here. So let's choose this nice fantasy landscape. Looks kind of Cinderella-ish. So you just need a single click and it's going to bring it up. Now as you go into it, let's just quickly review the work space. So workspace is really this. It's the whole program. And then you have this piece in the middle, that's the canvas. So this is standard through Photoshop. It's something that you'll hear throughout, but you can change the canvas size, your margins, all of that. Over here are all of your editing tools where you get to go through, and these are what allows you to manipulate. So in this case, this is a move tool or select tool. And as you can tell, if I move it around, right, even if I'm not even on that particular piece, because it's the layer that's selected, that way it can move. And this corresponds to, or the ability to move that to, the layers menu, which is over here. So these are the tools that can help you manipulate your image. These are really the space where you will organize and keep everything together. And so that ability to manipulate that text, the wake me up, is over here, and anything with the T, that's text. So this is your layers menu, and think of it like a sandwich. So you essentially have your burger bun on the top, or on the bottom, and then you have the other piece here. And in between, you've got, you know, the hamburger, the patty, the cheese, the lettuce, all of that. And that's how you look at it from here. So imagine this wake me up is your top bun. Your background is your bottom bun. So as you go through, whatever is here is going to be on the top, whatever is here is going to be on the bottom. And so this, being your layers menu, corresponds to here by the following. So when you right click, you'll see that wake me up is on the top, followed by the strip, followed by the background, and that corresponds to wake me up, strip, and background. Now the reason why, it's because it's based on where my cursor is at. I'm not over top of bar or before you go, because it's over here. But if I brought this back and I do it again, now look what happens, right? So I've got those pieces. So I'm just going to focus solely on the background picture. So within my layers menu, if you go down here, you're going to see a couple different icons that are important. You have delete, make a new layer, folders. So we're going to delete 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. Delete, 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 delete. And now we're left with just the picture. And as you notice, as I was adding that here, all of those delete layers or those actions showed up here. This is my history. It's kind of like your reverse and forward. So if I put myself in Go as I'm creating actions, maybe I'm going to create more layers, you're going to see all those new actions go here. I mean, I might need to pump the brakes a little bit and say, oh man, I went too little. So I can sit there and painstakingly go through here and just delete everything, or I just go back here and go to delete. And as soon as I make a new action, it's going to reset. Okay. So there we go. So now we're going to focus on just this background, and we've already gone through this piece right here. So I'm going to make sure I stay on my move tool. I've got that background selected, and now we're going to work with image manipulation. So there's two types. There is destructive and non-destructive, and basically it just means that destructive, just like NDT, right? So non-destructive is you're trying to use all these different chemicals, processes, or things to be able to not harm or not interfere with the structural integrity of whatever it is that you are scanning. Same with this. But in this case, what I'm going to be showing you is destructive because I'm actually doing it directly on the image itself. And so when you take that into account, there are different ways. There's typically usually a destructive method or a slightly longer non-destructive method that enables you to do it. But the non-destructive piece is advanced, and we're not going to focus on that today. So let's go ahead and destroy. Alright, so now that I've got the image selected, right, if I don't think I know, background, background, when it's grayed out like this, it means that it is selected. So first off, with our image selected, we're going to go to adjustments. Now there's two different ways, and let's just play around with some of these pieces, and I want you to explore the same. So there's different ways in which you can adjust the color of images. So we have brightness and contrast. This is going to be our first one. Remember that brightness is corresponding to value. So how bright is something or how dark? Remember, value is really anything from lightness to darkness of a color. So in this case, it's looking at the entire image right now. It's taking all those colors, it's really kind of calculating based on what you see here. It's just all this background process. But essentially, if I move to the right, it's going to get brighter. If I move to the left, darker. So take a look. Look what happens now. Right? The lightest tones before now become practically white, and those darkest tones now are almost pushing into some more mid-toned range. But still, it's keeping the value, it's just changing the hue of each individual color. Now if I go all the way in reverse, look what happens. You start losing a lot of those details. Now let's just go ahead and go back to 0. Now contrast, you can have, remember, high contrast, low contrast. It's about those extremes. So where we think of always black and white, in this case, you can have a high contrast color image where you're not necessarily seeing those mid-tones. Deep rich blacks, right, in this case it's really deep rich yellows, but look how much that we lose within all this different space here compared to when we go back to that 0. You get all that extra texture, you see more depth to your image. Now same down here, if we go low contrast, you see more detail, but you don't necessarily have that rich depth and complexity by having those shadows. We got rid of them. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to 0 again. And that shows you brightness and contrast. So the next piece I want to show you, back to image adjustments, is levels. So levels is really taken into consideration is looking at channels now. So yesterday we talked about the color profiles being RGB or red, green, blue, And together, all three of them, when light passes through, it's white. When broken down or parsed out, right, this is where we get to the visible eye. You can see red, green, and blue as channels. And so we're not going to talk, this is another one of those advanced pieces, but essentially you have your darks, your midtones, and your whites, or your highlights. And by sampling each one of those, it allows us to really color correct an image to its greatest capacity. And you'll start seeing where now, if you see a lot of this image is dark, and that's why you got this spike that's here. But I'm going to go ahead and get off of that one. So go back to adjustments. Exposure is corresponding to photography. So if it's really dark, you have underexposed. If it is overexposed, it means you have a lot of really big highlights. So that goes to that brightness and darkness piece. So we need to colorize our image. So there's two different ways we can do it within this destructive testing application that we're doing. So you could go to hue and saturation to at least talk about what saturation and desaturation means. Hue is another word for color. Lightness, darkness, right? Another piece for what we're doing for highlights, lowlights. So in this case, it's sampling a little bit different. So if we go all the way dark, it's really looking at now the yellows. But we want to go to the master. So on the master, it's looking at the entire image, light, all the way, or dark, all the way black. So it takes into consideration both brightness and contrast together, and it's moving that needle together. Whereas we were just doing it in singular channels before. Let's go ahead and reset. Saturation, highly saturated, very colorful, very rich. Or desaturation, we're stripping it of all color, and now you see that it's black and gray. So this is one of the steps. The next piece, what we want to do is we want to colorize. Or essentially we're going to keep and retain the value, your highlights to lowlights and dark, but we're going to put a color over top so it adds some complexity to it. And here's that piece. And reset. Hue changes your color profile. You'll start seeing it. Looks pretty trippy. Looks like a party. We can change it. So this is one way, but the way that I'm going to show you is actually going in there. You're going to desaturate using the black and white model, and then you're going to colorize within that menu. So we're going to reset. You're going to go to adjustments one last time. Go to black and white. There you go. So in here, we talked about red, green, and blue being the primary color profile, and that really corresponds to web and TV. There's 3 channels: red channel, green channel, blue channel, and those together makes the spectrum of light that projects image. In printing world and design, whenever you print something, you have cyan, C, magenta, M, yellow, Y, and black, K, CMYK. And so whenever you look at a fancier printer and you have all these different cartridges that you have to put in, that's what we're talking about. And essentially that same thing together, when you put all of CMYK together, it actually makes black, or CMY makes black. And what it means is that it's absorbing all of that color, whereas RGB, when you put them together, it is reflecting off all of those colors. I know it's weird, it's complicated, it's science, but it's pretty awesome. So in this case, after we did black and white, it actually desaturates it for you, and now you have this great, well-balanced colored image. And so we can sit here, and right now, even though colorized is highlighted, it's colorizing for black or black and white. But what happens if we change it? Let's pick yellow. Check that out. And so when we look at it, we have 255 red, 255 green. Those together make yellow. Blue, 0. So there's no blue in this. We're going to go ahead and pick yellow, or there. Now we can go back and we can play. I can add a little bit more red and see what happens. Whoa. So red really corresponds to my highlights and lowlights, but I'm going to bring that back. Okay. Sometimes you might want to consider, what are my numbers here? Based on your channels. Right? What starts going a little bit, oh wow, I'm checking out, look at my shadows and everything that's happening now. And it was set on 60, so we're going to go back to 60. What happens if I play with my yellow here and I bump it up? Oh man. So RGB really looks like it's, or at least red and yellow, they both really correspond to the highlights, lowlights, or brightness. Let's see what happens in green and cyan. So these are the midtones. Alright. Now I'm going to assume, just by that cyan is probably also going to be those midtones, and it's set on 60, so I'm going to go ahead and play around with it. So now it's playing with my mids, I go up, I'm lightening those colors. Alright, let's get it back to 60. And then I'm going to think blues. Let's see if it's shadows. Look at that, the darks come back. Alright, and then this last one, set on 80. So there's very little subtle because there's probably not a whole lot of magenta in there. But we notice how with the yellows and the reds, those warm color profiles, that it definitely changed. There was a heck of a lot more of those colors within it, and that's why you saw a greater degree of change. But for now, we can just colorize and you'll be good to go. Okay, so alright, okay. Now from here you do have the option that you could go back to adjustments and you can play with it a little bit more. So say maybe we want to work with our exposure, maybe we want to work more into your brightness contrast. Maybe I'm not quite satisfied, so I'm going to push it further, or I'm going to bring it down. Maybe I want it to be more dark and brooding. Maybe I need a little bit more contrast here, either way. There you go. So now we have this image. It totally changes the way our look and our feel. Even just that little bit of brightness and contrast really matters. So remember, hopefully the idea is that you want to use two different images. We got to put them together with that paper weaving technique. So this gets you at least through the technical aspect. Next video, we're going to talk about really your idea and that perfect triangle for creativity. When you get done, you can go ahead and go to File, Save As, or Export in this case. And you have PNG or JPEG. Go ahead and just do a PNG. You can be able to go through, you can look, alright, looks great. 100, save, and you get it back. Now remember, it is the name of your file, so make sure that you always name your file. And if you double click, you can always call it something else. FOC 1 8 by 10. Happy creating. See you soon.